Doubles and coffee. After a landmark budget by Minister of Finance Devendra Tanku and the UNC under Kamala Prasad, so all you've seen is PNM flying all around the place, flying off the handle, spewing lie after lie, incoherent statement after incoherent statement, illogical nonsense like Coleman, but saying, oh, all over the place, all over the ministries, MTS owes hundreds of millions, HDC owes hundreds of millions, this one owes hundreds of millions. Not even realizing that that is a confession that he as Minister of Finance was irresponsible, dishonest, and not paying his bills. So he called me, but is saying the country is broke after he was in charge of the country's finances for 9.5 years. That's the kind of arrant nonsense that's coming out of the PNM. But I like them to talk more, because let me tell you something, PNM lost about 13 to 18% of their supporters who voted for them on April 28th after that budget of the UNC and the ridiculous utterings of the PNM. But what was even worse, did you all notice, in the euphoria of the budget, a judgment came down against Keith Christopher Rowley, basically slamming him as a dishonest imbecile who tried to hide information about expenditure of public funds to the population. He tried to keep secrets, as that is the PNM way, the dishonesty, the NDA, the lack of accountability, transparency. The court condemns Rowley for non-disclosure, orders full disclosure of all legal fees, a legal victory against ex-Prime Minister Keith Christopher Rowley. In a landmark ruling delivered this evening, meaning yesterday, High Court Judge Justice Joan Charles delivered a stinging condemnation of ex-Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley's refusal to disclose the names of the attorneys he hired as Prime Minister and ordered full disclosure. The court condemned Rowley for trying to hide and protect the identity of the lawyers he hired and the amount of legal fees paid to each of them in connection with the Commission of Inquiry into the Purveyor diving tragedy that claims the lives of four men. Imagine Rowley's friends, financiers, golfing partners, and his gate neighbors and things made millions of dollars fighting against families of divers who were allowed to die because of decisions taken by Rowley's golfing partners. Let that sink in and soak in, you know. The victims, the children, the wives of these divers, yet to receive anything. But Rowley, who put board members, his good boy, and he said George husband, in charge of Purveyor with Piper and Mushtaq Mohammed and Small Pin as the Minister of Energy, who, knowing that there was proof of life, left those men in a pipe to suffocate for 39 torturous hours before they finally died and the lights went out. And then Rowley tried to keep secret from you, the population, how vile, how disgusting, how nasty a human being he is, because his friends became bigger millionaires in a tragic circumstance. It shows the heartlessness, the callousness, the inane ineptitude and downright evil of Keith Christopher Rowley, Stuart Smallpin Young, and the PNM. The judge at justice continued. Justice Joan Charles found that the ex-Prime Minister, meaning Rowley, was guilty of material non-disclosure and stated, in my view, the defendant ought to have disclosed to the court the now well-established practice by the state bodies to disclose the names of attorneys at law who were paid legal fees by the state. The failure to do so amounts, in my view, says Justice Joan Charles, to a breach of the duty of non-disclosure by the defendant, who owed a duty of candor to disclose materials which are reasonably required for the court to arrive at an accurate decision. Justice Charles found that Rowley acted illegally by disclosing the legal fees his office had paid in a lump sum, whilst protecting the identity of the individual attorneys and the amount of money each attorney had received. This is a man that became Prime Minister on September 7, 2015, with an EBC who cheated and gave P&M an extra hour, who climbed up the top of the ladder by lying in Emailgate on a sitting Prime Minister. A man who attacked his former leader of the P&M, Patrick Manning, attacked him and boasted that he worked OB on him. That miscreant became Prime Minister and was in charge of your funds, and a judge here is basically calling him a liar. The judge said at paragraph 28, I agree with the claimant's submission that it is curious that the defendant provided audited statements of the fees paid to commissioners and legal counsel up to June 2023, but insisted that information regarding the attorneys at law to whom the fees were paid was not available. Mr. Sweet, who is the permanent secretary, which gives you another insight to how insipid the P&M blight and the Balisé juice goes when professionals become tainted like Vishnu, Dan Paul, Alison, due diligence Lewis, permanent secretaries who are P&M in the heart, in the soul, and in the veins, and therefore put P&M before country. That's why the country is in such a mess. That's why Kamala Persad-Bissessar and Dave Tanko and the cabinet have to fix each and every ministry to serve you, the people. This Mr. Sweet deposed permanent secretary under Rowley boy, that the information that was collected had to be checked against accounting ledgers to verify the accuracy of payments. This information was collated from individual vouchers, as no single document existed with all the financial data on it. Given the exercise undertaken in order to provide information about the sums paid to counsel and commissioners, it is extremely unlikely, in my view, that the information regarding the fees paid to the attorneys at law was unavailable. The judge basically saying them lying. I did not accept this assertion by the defendant in the circumstances. The object of the Freedom of Information Act is to promote open and transparent government, especially when public funds have been expended. The right to access information under this regime is therefore only to be limited by exemptions necessary for the protection of the public interest. The public interest in this matter is in favor of disclosure, not of secrecy, not of hiding, not showing who your brethren and them was to get millions to attack and victimize victims. The public interest in this matter is in favor of disclosure, since it is reasonable and involves the expenditure of public funds. The practice of the state and public authorities to disclose fees paid to attorneys at law retained by them over the past years have not given rise to any attacks on these individuals by criminal element. Importantly, the defendant failed to adduce any evidence in support of this ground. In other words, Rowley and them concoct some rationale, some illogical nonsense to try and keep secret who and how much they paid in legal fees to the pariah lawyers. In these circumstances, paragraph 38, I grant the following orders. A declaration that the claimant is entitled to disclosure of the names of the person to whom disclosed amounts of legal and or consultancy and or other fees were paid by the Office of Prime Minister in connection with the Commission of Inquiry into the Pariah diving tragedy, as per Freedom of Information request dated April 24, 2023. An order of mandamus to compel the defendants to disclose the names of the persons to whom the disclosed amounts of legal and or consultancy and or other fees were paid by the Office of the Prime Minister in connection with the Commission of Inquiry into the Purveyor diving tragedy as per Freedom of Information request, April 24th, 2023, within 7 days. 3. A declaration that the failure and or refusal to provide the names of the persons to whom the disclosed amounts of legal and or consultancy and or other fees were paid by the Office of the Prime Minister in connection with the Commission of Inquiry into the Purveyor diving tragedy as per the Freedom of Information request dated April 24, 2023, is illegal and in breach of the claimant's right of access under the Freedom of Information Act. Slap, cuff, kick for Rowley and his dishonesty, Rowley and his inability to govern properly, Rowley and his arrogance, Rowley and his secrecy, Rowley and his corruption. And you all have to understand, this is just one element and an indictment on Rowley's character, his abject total failure as a prime minister. But you should have known that. You should have listened to Patrick Manning when he spoke about the raging bull and the man who doesn't get his way and the arrogance. You should have listened to the Tobagonians who knew that he was a teacher and he used his power position to get pum-pum from a girl of school age. You should have listened and read the inquiry into the Scarborough Hospital and the Landate matter. You should have read the 17 indictments. You should have read the interest of Greenvale and Rahal and building houses without change of use, without approvals from the Ministry of Planning, the Edinburgh Towers and all of the money that was lost. And when he was Minister of Housing, Las Alturas, the list goes on. You should have listened when he lied in Parliament about Emailgate, when he boasted about working OB on Patrick Manning as he was ailing and dying. You should have listened to the Inez Gate and the lack of integrity and his lack of filling out his Integrity in Public Life Act forms properly, to the indemnity with Nelson and Petrotrin's failure and shut down and the benefits given to the fake oil man. You all should have understood. Now there is a judgment that says Rowley is a miscreant, Rowley is dishonest, Rowley is a liar, Rowley tried to keep secrets, Rowley is not transparent, he's not accountable, he is an insipid, disastrous failure. That's the judgment. But you have already dealt with Rowley. Now you must deal with the PNM, because all of them are like their leader, Rowley, Smallpin, Coleman, but continue to reject them. To some other politicians, form another party. Build it now, so that when 2030 comes and UNC wins, because everybody wins, then PNM will lose and there will be a new opposition. An opposition with honesty, integrity, and creativity. We're merit-based. So remove PNM from opposition. Bless Shub Diwali.